Chances are that if you have found this video, it's because you have a child that is struggling with reading or know someone that's struggling. Possibly you've seen them be choppy and slow, or maybe they're not reading fluently, or maybe they just don't even know what a book is about after they're done reading it. And it can be frustrating to sit there and watch your child struggle, to see test scores come back showing that your child is basic or below the rest of the state with reading. And many times, parents blame themselves. They think, I should have read more with my child when he or she was younger, or I should have sat down with her to listen to her read. I want you to know that even if you're doing all the right things, that your child can still struggle. So stop blaming yourself. Hi, my name's Joanne Kaminski, and I've been closing the reading gap for kids online since 2010. I've chatted with many parents who think that their child's reading difficulties are their fault. But in all honesty, kids learn at their own pace. And sometimes skills are taught to kids and they're not ready for them. And there are so many factors at play that it's senseless to beat yourself up. Now, as an educator in the school system for 10 years, I saw more things happening in the school system that are to blame for your child not reading on grade level than I saw from parents. And this is why I've created this video. It's about time that parents learn the truth about the educational system so that we can put kids first and truly leave no kid behind. Now, I respect the teaching profession, and this video is in no way intended to bash the amazing teachers that grace our classrooms every day. Teachers get paid very little, volunteer a ton of time without pay, work weekends correcting papers, and have to plan many lessons. Time that should be spent during work planning for the following day is instead spent dealing with behaviors in the classroom or in meetings that seem to accomplish very little. Their classrooms are overflowing with students, and very few can take on the administration to make the adequate changes that need to happen in the school system. Now, like any job, a teacher is hired to do a job and to do it in a certain way. If he or she does not do their job as told, they risk being written up or fired. And many of these teachers spend their days with fear that they're going to get fired. Now, I am aware of the many things in our school system that need to change, but honestly, for me, I felt like I could make a greater impact with students working one-on-one with them through online tutoring than I could in our very flawed educational system. Now, as soon as I left the school system, I found out that I could close the gap a full year in reading with 8 to 12 hours of instruction for most kids. I found out I could use real assessments that help me understand what the needs of each student are. I could increase kids' motivation to read by allowing them to choose what they read. I could help kids exceed expectations that their parents, their teachers, and even they had of themselves. I could work with kids all over the world because most countries today teach kids how to read in English. I can help kids with all kinds of disabilities, and their disabilities don't have to define who they are. And I can teach kids faster than I was ever able to do in person because of all the tools that I need are available at the touch of a finger. Now, there's a reason why I titled this video 13 Reasons Why. If you've been following the popular Netflix series over the past 2 seasons, you're going to see how the school system failed to listen to a young woman going through emotional pain. And the same kind of emotional pain can be felt by our kids that are struggling with reading. 13 Reasons Why explores why a young woman took her life because of the school system. And in this video, I'm going to show you 13 reasons why the school is failing your child when it comes to reading. And then I'm going to offer you a solution to all of this. So let's dive in and explore 13 reasons why the school system could be failing your child. Number 1, forced to teach programs, not children. So the people that create curriculum have strong sales force teams that sell these programs to schools on a one-size-fits-all mentality. Now, no program has ever been able to create a one-size-fits-all curriculum. This is similar to taking a Tylenol, expecting all of your pain to magically go away. How do I know? I used to teach the SFA, Success for All, reading program. The name itself makes it seem like this would be a program that would work for all children. And I worked in an inner city school for 8 years and watched as only 30% of our students were able to read on grade level. If 70% of our students were reading below grade level, then it's pretty obvious that this program was not a success for all, but rather only success for the few and the lucky. Now, some people might be thinking that the teachers were not properly trained to teach this program, and that is why the kids were not successful with it. However, I was one of the trainers for the program as well, so I would actually travel the country in the summer teaching classroom teachers how to use the program. And teachers were then supported in their schools with coaches and an intervention program to catch the kids that were falling. So teacher preparation with this program was not the problem. The biggest problem was that teachers were not allowed to see where the weaknesses were in their students. To have program fidelity, teachers are observed, watched, and conferenced with to make sure that they are teaching the program as it was designed. They are not allowed to provide the necessary help or make changes to the program to meet the needs of the students in their classroom. Now, while in the summer I traveled the country training teachers, I supported the teachers in my own school that I worked in during the school year. So I would go into their classrooms with a checklist and mark which elements of the program they were following and which ones they were not. If there was a teacher that was not teaching the program the way it was intended, it was my job to inform the principal. Can you imagine how insecure this makes teachers feel? They live in constant fear that the job that they're doing is not good enough and that people are always watching them. Now, reason number 2, teachers are not properly trained. All right, I know that I mentioned that with the SFA program that the teachers were trained, and now I'm telling you that they are not properly trained. Well, some of you might be thinking that I'm crazy at this point, and that's okay. But this is actually about the education that teachers get to become a teacher. So when teachers go to college, they only need to take 2 classes on how to teach reading. 2 classes is a total of 6 credits. Much of what teachers learn is theory, and they're not strategies that will help them improve students' reading levels. It is the basics of how to teach reading. The university that I attended, Marquette, was anti-textbooks. So they even told us that when we worked in the school, we would have to teach out of these textbooks, but they did not prepare us on how to do that effectively. Instead, they mentioned the issue and taught us the way they felt that kids should be taught reading. So there's a clear divide on what the universities are teaching teachers and then how it's being done in the classroom. And many times when a first-year teacher enters her first teaching job, she is pretty much clueless on how to teach reading. For first-year teachers, having a specific program in place can be helpful, but then teachers are never allowed to take the training wheels off. And schools treat teachers as if they will never learn how to meet the needs of their students and force them to teach these curriculums that they have purchased as being research-based. And most teachers are not taught how to use these curriculums, like with the program that I taught with SFA. They get a teacher's manual and are given the green light to start lesson planning using this tool. Well, sometimes teachers are assigned mentors, but those mentors are classroom teachers that are just as busy and often are not able to come into the classroom and help the new teacher. All right, so reason number 3, you guys, schools treat all reading problems the same. So there are many different reasons why kids struggle with reading, right? Some kids never have been read to at home before they step into a classroom. Now, I know this probably isn't the case for your child, but in some homes, there are 0 books, and the parents do not take their child to the library. Some kids struggle with learning the alphabet and the sounds, while others struggle with understanding what they're reading. Some kids learn how to read, but are slow and choppy. And then there are others that don't have a large enough vocabulary to understand what he or she is reading. And schools treat all of these situations the same. Kids take a test and are placed into reading groups. And when I was a kid, there were 3 different reading groups. And today, there might be 8 to 10 different reading groups, or the kids may be taught as a whole class. Either way, they're not grouped by what skills they're struggling with. They're grouped by what is the highest level book they can read and understand. Many schools will group kids using what's called the Faunus and Pinnell leveling system. You may hear that your child is reading at a level J or X. And these levels have nothing to do with the struggles that kids have. 2 kids reading at a level J could have very different needs. One may struggle with phonics and another with comprehension. And when kids are in an intervention class, they're given a program that is meant to close the gap 2 years in one, but it doesn't always do that. The interventions are designed to reteach skills to kids in a similar way they were originally taught the first time. But hey, if it didn't work the first time, how's it going to work the second time? And now that I'm able to close the gap a full year with 8 to 12 hours of instruction, it seems that these programs are wasting a ton of time. When you hone in on the exact needs of the child in front of you, you can make huge gains in less time. Instead, kids are not able to move up a level until everybody in the group is ready. And this holds some students back from succeeding at an acceptable rate. Now, number 4, some schools do not recognize dyslexia. Now, the first time that I heard this, I was utterly shocked. There's so much information about dyslexia available to people. How can schools still be in denial that it exists? Now, I was working with a student in my daughter's grade. He had made some great gains, but not as quickly as all of my other students. And we had gotten him on grade level, but where I live, the standards are so high that kids are typically reading one grade level ahead of where they're at. So this child is still behind his peers. So I had been seeing signs of dyslexia and decided to do some more research about it and learn everything that I could. And I found a checklist that showed common traits of dyslexic kids. I checked off 30 items on this checklist that this child was exhibiting. My parent asked me to attend the parent-teacher conference. So I went in with my checklist so that I could have an honest conversation with the teachers. The teachers wanted to focus on his behavior instead of other reasons why this child could be acting out. I mentioned that I thought the reason he was having behavior problems was that he'd rather act as the bad kid and not the kid that can't read as well as the other kids. The teachers disagreed, and I began to get real with them, and I said, look, you're telling me that you're working with him 30 minutes extra every day. He's working with me for 2 30-minute sessions during the week, and he's still not at the level his peers are at. Here are 30 different things that dyslexic kids have in common, and he has every single one of these. Don't you think dyslexia could be the reason he's struggling so much? And the teacher looked me in the eyes, and she said, we don't recognize dyslexia in this district. Sat back in my seat in a defeated manner because there was nothing that I could say that was going to help this kid get additional services in the school system. Now, I know that some of you are thinking right now that it would be odd that I would want him to get additional services for free at the school since I'm a tutor. And honestly, I want parents to utilize all of the free resources before they hire me. And while I charge what I'm worth because I get results, I want to work with the right people for the right reasons. I care about kids getting a fair education and getting their needs met. I'm also there for those kids when the system has failed them in some way. Reason number 5, summer school is just more of the same thing. So my first daughter never really needed summer school. She was at a first grade reading level in kindergarten. My middle daughter had suffered from issues with multiple ear infections, which led to tubes in her ears. And often when kids have a ton of ear infections, they need help with speech and reading. And Becca was one of those kids. And when her first grade teacher mentioned that Becca would benefit from doing reading in summer school, I supported them. I felt like they were able to identify her reading problems and meet her needs. So I enrolled her, and then I would pick her up afterwards. And I watched teachers that didn't work at our school try using the same methods they tried during the school year with my daughter. So for summer school, they combined 3 different area schools, and any of the teachers that work there can apply for the position. This means that my daughter didn't know the teachers and they didn't know her. They did an assessment to find out what her level was, and then they put her into a small group. But not all of the kids were working with teachers at the same time, so they were reading on their own, doing worksheets or other activities, while the teachers were working with groups of 3 to 5 kids. So there's 25 kids in this class, which meant that most of the time, my daughter was not getting the instruction that she needed. Now, have you ever heard of the definition of insanity? It's doing the same thing and expecting different results. I know I'm not making friends here right now with some people that are listening to this. In fact, some of you might be insulted if you're a teacher, but I know that deep down in your heart, there's a place that might actually agree with me. Well, reason number 6, special ed teachers are forced to teach programs as well. Now, the curriculum companies have even brainwashed the schools and the special ed teachers that they need programs as well. They all state that they use research to create their program, and that's not a lie. But if you take a research-based curriculum, give a 4-hour training to teachers on how to teach it, and then you say go, you never know what kind of results you're going to get. Teachers need different types of support to teach curriculum correctly. So you can't just put it in front of someone and they automatically know what to do. I watched this happen in the school system when we implemented new curriculum. If I gave the same program to 10 different teachers, they implemented the program in 10 different ways. And some were immediately effective, and others struggled with the concepts and then interpreted how to teach it their way, doing the best that they knew how, but not entirely the way that was done when the research was conducted. So when I hear that the only way to teach kids struggling with reading is through one program or another, I usually just silently disagree, but today I'm going to tell you that this is what the big companies that sell these programs want you to think. It is their job to sell you their program. So they use words like, this is the only program that works for kids that are dyslexic. If you believe their statement, then the only solution for you is to buy and use their program, and they have done their job. Now, schools believe these sales pitches, and teachers many times are convinced by these sales pitches as well. But the truth is, programs do not teach children, teachers do. Programs are tools, not the end-all solution. So never believe that there's a one-size-fits-all approach to teaching reading or any subject. And if anyone does tell you this, like, oh, you can only use Wilson, or you can only use Orton Gillingham, know that they have been brainwashed and they don't understand the most effective ways to teach kids. If a teacher's interpretation of that program is accurate, then that teacher might be effective. However, if they are not, then they will be not effective. There's another side to this. If the teacher has interpreted the program correctly, but never goes off course to meet the individual needs that are in front of him or her, then he or she will not be giving the best instruction for that child. Reason number 7, only the bottom percentage qualify for extra help. So each school has a certain amount of funds to run on. Often there are not enough funds to staff all schools appropriately. So they come up with rules that seem to make sense. For example, kids that struggle the most with reading are in first grade. So 30% of those students should get extra help to start them off on the right track. The next group that struggles the most is second grade. So 20% of those students will get help. And last is third grade. So 10% of those students will get help. Now, if you were to utilize your resources in the best possible way, this makes sense. And the National Reading Panel that analyzed all of the research that had been done up to the year 2000 put this all into one document. And they found that early detection and intervention with students helped decrease the number of struggling readers later on. Now, these breakdowns in percentages do not make sense. Why? Because not every school fits this percentage mold. There are many schools that have more kids that struggle that will never get the help that they need. And these kids are gray area kids, so they struggle, but they don't struggle enough to receive extra services. And since 2010, many of these parents have been seeking out my services. And these parents were smart enough to know that their child was not reading at grade level and knew their child needed help. And often the school's only answer for some of these kids was to mention summer school. And as we've seen in reason number 5, this is just more of the same kind of instruction that didn't work the first time. So why would it work now? Reason number 8, most teachers don't want feedback unless it's positive. Now, I have to admit that I was one of those teachers that didn't want feedback unless it was positive. Why? I worked hard. I came in at 6 o'clock in the morning and didn't leave most days until 6 o'clock at night. Not only that, but I worked weekends as well. I wanted people to recognize the great job that I was doing. And honestly, I wasn't doing anything that many of the other teachers were not doing. I wasn't sticking out because the norm was to work these crazy hours so that you can get the job done. And most people only get recognized when they're going above and beyond, right? And then an administration or curriculum specialist comes to observe the classroom. It's natural to want to seek positive affirmations from them, but instead the teachers are given ways on how to improve, and it feels like a slap in the face. You work so hard and you give so much, and then the teachers have these people come into your classroom for 1 hour to give you feedback on how you can improve. It feels like nothing you do will ever be good enough because you're giving everything you have. It was my job to give feedback to teachers. I watched their faces droop when I gave suggestions on how to improve. I also watched as my relationships with these teachers declined. I wasn't taught how to give feedback appropriately. I was just told that I had to give feedback. I thought that I was doing my job, but I was hurting teachers' self-worth and confidence. And if I worked with you in the past in this position and you're listening to this, I am so sorry. I wish I had been trained on how to give feedback appropriately. When after teachers are given feedback on how to improve, what do you think happens next? They start to work fewer hours, stop caring as much. They feel like they were giving 120% before, and it didn't result in anyone noticing, so they might as well just give 50% and just get by. Many teachers are receiving this kind of feedback. They think they weren't meant to be a teacher. They might decide to leave the teaching profession for good. Because of this process, who suffers? The students. The students are now left with teachers who don't believe in themselves, and they're frustrated with their job. The reality is we all need feedback to get better. We learn through making mistakes. And as we become adults, It's easy to forget this and take feedback as a personal attack. Reason number 9, kids are told they can't read books that they're interested in. When my oldest daughter, Caitlin, was in 6th grade, she wanted to read a book that was at a level Z. And she was told that this book would be too hard for her and she should not read it. She came home and told me how she really wanted to read this book, and her teacher told her that she couldn't. So I told her to read it anyway at home and ignore the advice from the teacher. I mean, if a kid really wants to read a book, what harm does it cause for them to give it a shot and decide if it's too hard or not? And the problem that I had with this teacher's advice is that the testing they do was based on nonfiction reading levels at the time. So I knew that my daughter had a higher fiction reading level than nonfiction reading level, but they don't assign 2 different levels for kids. They're given a level based on one assessment and only allowed to pick books a couple levels below or above that number. So kids are given a range, and the range is based off of incorrect data. Now, at the parent-teacher conference, I brought this topic up, and the response that I got was, fiction and nonfiction reading levels are the same. At this point, I had to agree to disagree on the point for a positive relationship with the teacher for the rest of the school year. What teachers don't realize is that when kids are interested in reading about a certain topic, they are more willing to spend the time understanding it because they care. They are willing to come across vocabulary they don't know and try to figure out what it means more so than they would with something that they have no interest in. So instead of trying to limit kids inside of a little box of books they can and cannot read, try doing this instead. Have your child or student pick up a book that interests him or her. Have them turn to a random full page and put 5 fingers up. Have them read the page, and for every word that your child doesn't know the meaning of or cannot read correctly, have them put down a finger. If by the end of the page your child has all the fingers down, then this could be a sign that the book will be too hard. However, if your child really seems excited after having all the fingers down to read it, then there's no harm in letting him or her try. Number 10, kids have to read the same book over and over again. So research shows that kids get better with their fluency by reading the same book over and over again. Now, when I was teaching in the school system, I was aware of this, but I didn't truly understand the impact that it had on kids. When kids are in kindergarten and 1st grade, the books are really short. I mean, they might only be like 10 pages long. So my daughter would come home from school and tell me that she needed to read her book that she read in class. The first day was fine. She read 4 books from class and I signed off on her sheet. The next day I listened to her read the same 4 books to me again. And this continued for 2 weeks. I called the teacher because some really bad things were happening that I was noticing as a parent. Number 1, my daughter was dreading doing her reading homework. 2, I was dreading listening to her read the same books again. 3, my daughter had memorized the books and was not really reading them. 4, I was having to fight with her to get her to do her homework. There were tears, and I honestly was losing my patience, and I was making her read to her dad because I needed a break. Now, as a parent and a reading specialist, I was concerned that we were doing the opposite of motivating kids to read. We were turning reading into an argument and a chore. I called the teacher to find out why she kept coming home with the same books and how much longer would I have to listen to her read the same books over and over again that I have also memorized. And the response I got was, research shows that kids who practice the same books over and over again become better readers. My response to her was, but what if we're killing her desire to want to read completely? I explained what was happening in the home, and she began sharing how I should reward my child with trinkets when she's doing the right thing. So she turned all of this into a parenting lesson, which is not the reason I was calling. I didn't ask for parenting advice. I felt completely ignored, as if the research was more important than the child that was sitting in front of her. Kids give us signs and clues when things are not right. Are we going to ignore them just because of what research says? What about common sense? Could we please use research and common sense to come up with decisions that are best for kids? Reason number 11, everyone knows each other's reading level. So when I was in the 1st grade, I was in the Blue Jay group. Everyone knew who the best readers and the worst readers were. These groupings killed my self-esteem as a reader. I felt there was no way to escape this stigma. Guess what? It isn't much different for kids today. Kids are given books with their reading levels marked on the outside of the book. The lower the letter, the more you struggle with reading. Classroom libraries are organized into these reading levels, and kids can only pick books from certain bins. The bins make it easy for kids to find just right books, but it comes at the price of everyone knowing what your reading level is. Better readers will brag about their reading level and put down the kids that are at a lower reading level. Taunting kills the desire for kids to pick their next book because they're automatically thinking about how they are dumb and how they have to choose books from the dumb box. Now, if you're a teacher and you're listening to this, I know this is what the school is telling you to do, or you read research that says this is best practice. However, when we group kids in this way and publicly make their level known, it is not the best thing. Our number one priority must be all of the kids in front of us. Reason number 12, teachers feel like they are in competition with each other. I'm going to let you in on a little secret here. Not every teacher is excited when other teachers get recognized for great test scores, classroom management skills, or best teacher award. Teachers get jealous, and with jealousy comes competition. When teachers compete with each other, they don't want to share their resources, knowledge, or time. The teachers feel that when they share these things, that they are letting the competition win. Now, when I was a reading specialist, I was talking with a second grade teacher who was telling me about a great strategy that she uses with her students. She told me she got the idea off the internet, and when I asked her what the website was, she refused to tell me. She said, if I share that information with you, then you're going to tell all the other teachers about it, and they're going to start using it. This means that when kids get to my class, it won't be a new idea anymore. I left school that day feeling sad. I was sad for this teacher, and I was sad for all of the other teachers that could not learn and grow from the experience that she had. Not all teachers feel like they need to compete with each other. However, when teachers do feel like this, it poisons the school culture and it hurts the students the most. And finally, reason number 13, teachers are unaware that there are two different reading levels for fiction and nonfiction reading. So I touched on this idea earlier that teachers are unaware that kids have a different fiction and nonfiction reading level when my daughter was told that she could not read a book that was supposedly too hard for her. And this teacher is not alone in her ignorance. I was not aware of this either until I was out of the classroom as a teacher. I taught third grade and fourth grade, and this is the year that kids who may never have struggled with comprehension before begin to struggle because the students are transitioning between learning to read to reading to learn. And parents become confused when their child's teacher mentions that their child is struggling. Now, I had no idea why this was happening, but I knew that it was happening. And it wasn't until I started using the QRI-4 that I was able to have kids read fiction and nonfiction passages to find out what their reading levels were. Now, most kids had a lower nonfiction reading level than fiction reading. Now, it makes sense if you think about it. As parents, we read a lot of fiction to our kids. Fiction's fun to read out loud to your child before they go to bed. Nonfiction can be boring unless, as a child, you have an intense desire to learn about bulldozers. But once the child gets to kindergarten, most of the books on the shelves are fiction. And these bookshelves do not change too much as the child goes into first grade, second grade, and third grade classrooms. And when kids pick out books to read during DARE time, drop everything and read, they pick out fiction books. Let's face it, fiction books are more entertaining to read. Now, with all of these experiences with fiction reading, no wonder why kids are better at it. We're good at those things that we do over and over again. It is not as easy to get kids to pick out nonfiction books. My daughter's going into sixth grade, and I told her to create a book pile of books that she's going to read this summer. There's not one nonfiction book in her pile. Is this because I don't have nonfiction books in my home? Absolutely not. I have 3 full bookcases from floor to ceiling with fiction and nonfiction books for her to choose from. This is because her preference is to be entertained and not learn. In fact, she hates school and always has. She even calls me out when I try to sneak learning into our fun time. She knows me too well. When I became a tutor, I knew that I had the power to increase kids' nonfiction reading levels. So I wrote a book that is the only nonfiction reading intervention in existence today. And it's called How to Raise Nonfiction Reading Levels. It's available on Amazon. And I created this so that readers could be active readers instead of passive readers. So in nonfiction text, kids need to read and reread to retain the information. If they just read it from the beginning to the end, they forget a ton of information that's presented. So I created a way for them to come up with questions using the table of contents and answer those questions as they're reading. And this process has allowed kids not only to become better readers in nonfiction books, but also in all of their academic areas as well. So what can you do to make sure that your child succeeds? Now the choice is yours. Do you want to continue to put your child's reading level in the hands of the school system that is flawed and not close the reading gap for your child? Or do you want to take your chance with a tutor that gets results and set your child up for educational success? Want to see some of the results that my students get? Then you can check out the next video that I'm going to link after this. If you're interested in taking a look at what online tutoring looks like and how quickly kids can improve with the right instruction, I'm going to put a link inside of the description here. Now, if you're a teacher and you enjoyed the videos on my page, please subscribe. Not only do I tutor kids in reading, but I also help other tutors start their online tutoring business. Do you want to learn more about how to close the reading gap for your child? Are you ready to start beating the education system and giving the gift to your child of a tutor that can make a difference and get your child succeeding at reading? Do you want your child to feel the self-confidence that comes from being able to read as well as or better than all the other kids in their grade? If you recognize that something is not right with your child's reading, it's time to take action. Let's set up a time for a free assessment so that I can see where your child is struggling and give the help that will make the difference of a lifetime. Students that work with me receive the following benefits: increased reading levels, increased confidence, score significantly gets better on tests. They receive recognition for being the most improved in their grade level. They do better in all of their subjects because they can understand what they're reading. They increase their overall knowledge and vocabulary. They learn study tips that they'll be able to use in high school and college. They read for pleasure. If you're interested in getting a free assessment for your child, then definitely click on the link in the description of this video. I hope you've enjoyed listening to the 13 reasons why your child might be struggling because of the school system and what you can do about it. I really do take this seriously, you guys. It is my pride and joy to be able to work with as many kids that I have gotten to work with over the years. And I hope that we'll be able to get a chance to be able to connect together soon.